I'm going to continue the second half of 7.4 by doing another problem. This one involves, again, x1, x2. So this is my objective function. These are my constraints. Notice that they're all less than, and each variable has to be greater than 0. So I need a slack variable for the first two inequalities, s1, s2, to be equal to. This guy, I'm going to move the x1 to the left and x2 to the left. I get negative 4x1 minus 4x2 plus z equals 0. So these values and these values I'm going to put here. So I have x1, x2, s1, s2, and z. Those are my five variables, my five letters. Then after this, these are my inequality. The guys on the right are my equals, the 12, the 15, and the 0. Again, negative 1, negative 1, 1, 0, 0. 3, negative 1, 0, 1, 0, 15. Negative 4, negative 2, 0, 0, 1, 0. And that's how you put it in the tableau. Okay? So now here is a different situation in the sense that I have two rows. Now notice that out of these two, my most negative indicator is this one, negative 4. So this is my pivot column. Now, if you take 12 divided by 1, you still get 12, but however, when you go up and look along the pivot column, the only ones that you can choose as a row are the positive ones. So because this is negative, the only one to divide is by 3. So 15 divided by 3 is 5. Essentially, that by default, he's the pivot. So it's the pivot row, second row, pivot column, first column. So I'm going to divide everything here by essentially 3. So divided by 3, divided by 3, divided by 3, and so on. So this row becomes this row when you divide everything by 3. Now these two are easier, a little nicer, because I'm trying to make this be 0. So there's already 1 and negative 1. So negative 1 plus 1 is 0. My thumb. Negative 1 minus 1/3 is negative 3 over 3 minus 1 over 3 is negative 4/3. 1 plus 0. 0 plus a third. 0 plus 0. 12 plus 5. And that makes that guy a 0. Now this one, I have to multiply this whole thing by 4. And I should have added a little arrow there, not just a little dash. So 4 times 1 is 4, minus 4 is 0. 4 times negative 1/3 is negative 4/3. Now this is negative 6/3, it becomes negative 10/3. These are zeros, stay 0. This is 4/3 plus 0. This is 0 plus 1. Now, multiply by 4, that's 20. 20 plus 0 is 20. So now, notice that I'm done pivoting, but my next one, I have another negative indicator. So the issue here is I need to go up into this column and figure out which one is my pivot row. However, when you go up the line, negative ones are excluded. So because these are both negative, and they're all negatives in this column, then I can never find the pivot row because I need one needs to be positive to be able to find the pivot row. If one of them's not positive, meaning that they're all negatives, then I don't have a pivot again, the second row, but I have a negative indicator. So in the case where the whole column is negative in my pivot column, there is no maximum solution. So that's what this is saying. So I don't have to pivot here because this tells me there is no, essentially, I cannot keep going, I can't pivot again. So no maximum can be determined, which means this problem has no maximum. And you would stop. I know a lot of my students say, I want a lot of these, so I have to keep going. I gave you one just so you can have. Now I'm going to give you one that's kind of a little tougher. This is 3 variables, like if it was an x and y, a z. So again, these are my constraints. And so my tableau is a little bit bigger. I have 3 inequalities as constraints. So I have to have 3 slack variables, S1, S2, S3. So I put them equals. I move each of these guys over, negative 4x1, positive 3x2, negative 2x3. And then z and 0. So I take the numbers from each of these coefficients, and I make them in a row. I put these coefficients, and I make another row out of it. So like I did the previous problem. So you can know where these numbers are coming from, and these numbers here. So that's my tableau, my simplex tableau. So now, out of these two, my most negative one, again, is this. It's not always going to be the left one, but it's just kind of the way it's set up here. Because this could have been, uh, I don't know, a 2x. This could have been a 4. So when you move it over, this could be -4, and most negative will be over here. It just depends on where you move it to. So this is my pivot column. Notice that they're all positive, so I can find pivot row. So I take all of these and divide 40 divided by 2, 60 divided by 4, 12 divided by 1. Out of these three answers, the 12 is the smallest. So this is my pivot, 1. Now your whole goal is to make the pivot equal to 1. But this guy's already a 1, so you don't have to divide anything. He's done. He's ready. So now I need to get the rest zeros. So I have to multiply 1 by -2 in the third row, add it to a +2 to get 0. I have to multiply this guy by -4, add it to a +4 to be 0, and then I have to multiply the +1 times a +4 to cancel the -4. So if I take a -2, sorry that I'm kind of glossing over this, but if I take a -2 times all of this third row, and add it to this row, and I get new answers, those would be my new answers. If I took -4 and I multiply all of this, and I add it to each of these, I'd get these answers essentially. And then last but not least, if I multiply all of this row by +4, and I add it to this row individually, I get these answers. So now it's pivoted. So out of all this is left, I still have a negative indicator. This is -1. So I have to go to this row, and I notice that there's two negatives here, so these can't be in the problem. So this has to be my pivot. It's my only choice. Because this pivot is 1, I don't have to divide anything by it. So now notice how all these are -1s. So all I gotta do is add. I don't have to multiply anything. So 0 plus 0, 1 minus 1, 2 minus 6, 1 plus 0. Sorry, 1 plus 0, 0 plus 1, -2 minus 4, 0 plus 0, 16 plus 12. And then again, the first with the third, 0 plus 1, -1 minus 1, 2 plus 3, 1 plus 0, 0 plus 0, -2 plus 1, 0 plus 0, and 16 plus 12. And the last row, kind of the same thing. But now that I do this a second time, notice no more negatives. So I have essentially my answer. I kind of put it all here. I want to save the paper here, but notice that this column is pivoted, this column is pivoted, this column is pivoted, and this column is pivoted. So those 4 values that I circled are your 4 non-basic values because they're going to equal something that's not 0. So x2 is equal to 16, s2 is equal to 28, and x1 is equal to 28. So x1 is 28, x2 is 16, s2 is also 20 as slack variable. x3, s2, and s3 are zeros. They're your basic variables. And this is your maximum, 64. So this kind of summarizes everything. x1 is 28, x2 is 16, s3 is 28. They're essentially your basic variables. Then x3 is 0, s1 is 0, s3 is 0. And your maximum value occurs at 64.